Welcome everyone to the 70th edition of the Home Theater Hub. We got Paul dropping in a new can, and I'm repping Maryland. Don't tell me what the score is. When I left at halftime, it was 38-40 Florida, unfortunately. Everybody was turning the ball over, both teams, and Florida was shooting lights out from three. So, hoping to get back to that after the show. So no spoilers, please.
Oh, sorry, I just hit enter. No,
You're losing. Sorry.
my bad.
Don't do that. Don't do that. I might have to abandon the whole show. This is my favorite time of year, guys, for sports. March Madness. Any of you other guys watch college basketball?
Nope.
No
Not at
college
all.
basketball, huh?
I wait for them to get to the NBA.
No, yeah, I'm a huge college basketball fan. They play defense in college. They don't in the pros. So,
Yeah.
so Mr. Ike, how was your week, sir?
It's been a good one. Very busy at work, but I'm excited. I'm excited for the show that we have tonight. It's been one that we've been kind of working on, right, for the last couple of weeks, and I'm thankful that we're here. But yeah, it's been a good week. Not much going on from the home theater front, but this is how we unwind and get to relax and look
Right.
forward to Friday.
Sure.
So happy to be here.
How about you, Paul? Anything new going on in the Brews and Views home theater?
Nope, nothing new this week. Believe it or not, I'm trying to think. No. Jessica got a Oculus 3 after trying one probably a month ago or a couple months ago. And so she's been enjoying that, and because since it's the one I had is screen door effect, and that strained her eyes, and she couldn't handle that. But the new one she likes, so I might have to upgrade. It depends.
Okay. So why the Oculus over the Apple? Price or
yeah, $2,500 extra price. Yeah, that's a big. Yeah, I mean, for something that, let's be honest, I mean, what are you doing with an Oculus except for playing Beat Saber and maybe one or two workout games? I mean, that's a pretty expensive Beat Saber for $3,000, and I don't even think you can get that on the Apple one. Maybe I don't know.
Can you do like computer programs and stuff on the Oculus also, like you can the Apple, or no?
I don't know. It's not. Yeah,
it's more just straight up gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it does other thing. I mean, you can watch movies and all that stuff. It is a computer. It's just not built to be a second PC like screen where you can have like Star Trek-y, like, oh, let me drag this screen. And
right.
It's not made to do that. It's more it's a $500 device, not a $3,500 device.
Yeah, no, understood. And then for the first time on the show, we're introducing Mr. Jim. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Jim from Lumagen. I'm just here to hang out and answer any questions people have and talk about Lumagen.
Very good. So how about you? Any recent updates? I see you're sitting in your theater here, which we'll be so delighted to get a nice treat of what your theater looks like here later on in the show. Have you done any recent upgrades or anything to your theater?
I haven't. About, 8 or 10 months ago, I went to 240 volts. I have like 5 zones of 240 for everything in the front, so I can isolate everything, keep everything as clean as possible. And then I have 240 to 120 transformers. I put that in, but that was the last thing I've really done, except for today I had to fix it because my new kitty destroyed my IR sensor. And I was in rewiring, pulled out a couple cables and back. And so that's the last thing I've done is today was like, okay, I suppose I should get it working right so I don't have to use manual remotes.
Man, I can't imagine with the 240. I just priced running another 20 amp circuit to my closet, and the guy was like $750, and I'm like looking at wire, like, man,
Console's expensive.
50 foot of wires like less than $100, and a 20 amp receptacle is like $10, like how are we
Wait,
getting a
the,
750?
you got 50 foot of Romex for $70?
Yeah, that's what Home Depot says
Oh,
for 20
okay.
amp Romex. That's what I saw on there. It could be more expensive, but
Yeah, you can buy the small bundles like 25,
mhm.
50, and I think 100. I don't 75 maybe, but yeah, that's so is there anything like to keep animals like cats and dogs off of some wiring? Like I know you can do like some lemon spray or something like that they don't like to nibble on. Is there anything that you're aware of on that?
We basically we have a false wall in front, and so the problem I'm having now is it's just a kitten, 7 months old. It's a Maine Coon, so it's full size.
Yeah,
basically.
still learning. Yeah.
He has learned how to open the cabinets in the front of the theater, and he just wanders in and starts doing things. One day he hit a power switch and turned everything off, and it's just almost amusing, except for today I had to like figure out what he had pulled out so I could get everything up and working again. So
yeah, I have a no pet rule for my theater, so I keep the door shut all times, and if I have two small dogs, and my one dog, he loves sitting next to me, and he will literally stand at the door, and he knows I'm going to kick him out, so he'll just stand at the door looking in.
That's awesome. He's like, nope.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any pets, but we have a 3-year-old. I don't think there's much difference. It's same level of chaos in the rooms.
Well, Jim, you get to play Russian roulette of what you need to fix today, right?
Yeah. What got nibbled on today?
Or something to keep him from opening those doors and wandering in and randomly pulling cables out.
That's too funny. So, guys, any movies? Were you able to partake in any movies this week or TV shows?
TV shows. I caught up with one of my favorite TV shows, Death in Paradise. It's one of those whodunit type, laid back comedy style.
Cool. What is that called? Get in Paradise?
Death in Paradise. Death in Paradise.
Like a Knives Out type of clue.
Well, it's laid back. It's Caribbean, so it's
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really great show. I think this is is it 15th season? So
so I'm way behind.
Yeah, but you will love it. It's one of those things that when you start watching, you're just gonna binge and binge. But it's laid back. It's family friendly, and it has a lot of just fun thinking mysteries. It's one of those shows where, as much as I watch TV shows and you can somehow try to predict what happened, you know how you watch TV shows like, yeah, we know who the killer is.
Mm-hmm.
For this one, you just got to really wait till the end.
Nice.
But it's fun. It's laid back, no violence. You can watch it with a kid.
Gotcha. Sounds like Murders in the Building, or Only Murders in the Building type of
those types of things, it's like, the first 3 minutes somebody gets taken out, and then you spend the next 50 minutes trying to figure out. And I find myself trying to figure it out too, and I'm like, I don't know. And then they go through this whole puzzle of, this is how the detective solved it, and it's really cool. It's laid back.
That's awesome. I got it written down. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah,
even though they're already 15 seasons in.
What about you, Don? Did you watch anything? We know you didn't listen to anything.
Well, actually, there's a lot. This is a lot that went on in that theater. This is a fun time for me right now that I actually can say that I've got some updates. And Jim, the running joke is that it's taken me 4 years to actually build my theater. I think I discussed that with you the other day when I called Jim for a little help with the Lumagen, picked right up. I called him one time and he called me back within an hour. left him a message, called me back within an hour. So I just want to applaud you on fantastic customer support, by the way, with that. But yeah, no, it's a fun time in the Horizon Home Theater right now. So Saturday night, I got all the speakers wired. All except for the subwoofers. I didn't do the subwoofers yet. So all the speakers, I pushed the rack into the closet, and all the speaker wires were plugged in and ready to go. About 2:00, and those of you that have been following, my posts on Facebook and stuff like that, I'm pretty meticulous about how this rack looks. I think I showed a picture of it the last time, and I got all the speaker wires just as meticulous. So I got that in there. And then it was like 2:00 in the morning, and I was like, you know what? My mother-in-law's right upstairs above this theater. I said, let me go ahead and fire it up. Let me just, I got to hear it. Right. So it's 2 a.m. in the morning. I turn on the Lindorf, and it triggers the amps. It lights up all blue. It looks pretty. And then I cut on the Kaleidoscape, and I turn on the Kaleidoscape, and as I go to play a scene, I hear this pop, 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 pop. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Right. And I was still behind the rack. So I literally hit the surge protector. I turned it off completely. And I start smelling something. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I just fried my entire system. And I'm thinking right away, like, oh, what is going on here? So long story short, I had a defaulty amp, and reached out to the amp company, but it sounded like fireworks going off. I unplugged everything from the amp, and isolated it, took it out of the rack, plugged it into another outlet, and it started doing the same exact thing. So immediately turned it off, and luckily, because I have enough amps to cover the channels that it would take to run a normally 15 channel theater, I was still able to move some stuff around. I didn't unhook my wiring, but I just kind of threaded some extra wire to be able to reach other places and stuff like that. So yeah, I was able to partake into some movies this week. So I watched Sonic 2 with my son. If you've not seen Sonic 2, the Atmos in that is phenomenal. I've done a calibration in the theater without any with one subwoofer. I have 4 subwoofers, but I haven't hooked up the mini DSP yet. So I've done a calibration with Room Perfect. What else? The other night I couldn't sleep, so I woke up and I watched The Gorge from Apple TV.
Yep.
I tell you what, people gave that a bad rap, and I'm not really like a zombie type of guy, but it was okay to pass the time. I want to rewatch it during the day because I think some of that gunfiring in there is gonna light up the theater, man.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Is it horror? Is it a horror movie?
It wasn't.
No, it's no scare. No,
okay.
I mean, I think there might have been one scary part, one jump scare, but nothing.
Yeah,
it was more like The Notebook met zombies.
There you go. There you go.
So-
Yes,
so-
I was like, it started out so apocalyptic, and then it turned into some love story. And I'm
right.
like, oh, damn, what? No.
Now I'm not watching it. I'll let you guys.
No, you should watch it. It's not bad. It's not great,
How
but
do you go from
It has a really good. The
story.
storyline is really cool, and it's one of those like it can suspend your reality, right? Because it's the Gorge, right?
Yeah.
And anyways,
Bless you.
beyond that, it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, once it became the whole like, I'm blowing you kisses. I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, oh, come on.
Yeah, quickly before we get to Jim, let's just give a quick shout out to those who are watching. leave a comment in the chat if you're watching. I know there's more of you out there.
Yes, absolutely.
But quick shout out to Benny and Bobby. Thanks for joining us
And
tonight.
we'll get to your question in a little bit.
Yeah,
here,
we're
Bobby.
starting your questions, and we'll get to them in a little bit as we go into the show. So yeah, let's get back to Jim. So have you watched any movies lately at the theater, Jim? Movies, TV shows?
Interestingly, when we have friends over to watch movies, they always want to watch the Mission Impossible 7. So I've watched that about 5 times now. And then we have our grandson over and watch the Sonic movies for one, and the other kids, Secret Life of Pets and 2, and all those we get to watch over. That's most of the movies I've been watching is what my grandson wants to watch.
Have you watched Sing with your grandson yet? Sing 2, S-I-N-G.
Yes, we have.
Yep.
Those are amazing.
S-I-N-G.
Troll movies are
we've
pretty
watched.
good. Yeah, there's all kinds of kid movies. And Despicable
that's
Me, the Minions. I mean, there's all kinds of cool. The animation movies are really great now.
Yeah.
With Sing, you get like a concert, because they're singing like
legitimately.
Yeah. So that's great. So Jim, why don't you? I know that we talked about the movies and stuff, but why don't you tell everybody about who you are and what you're here for today?
Okay. Well, I'm the founder of Lumagen. I'm the president, and we're a small company. And we've been around for about 23 years. So we've been doing, back in the day before even DVI was around, we had analog video processors. So what got me started in doing Lumagen was I had sold a company and was kind of looking at what would be fun to do, and I decided to build a home theater. At the time, I bought a Dwin D700, and I needed a video processor, and the only one there was the Ferrugia at $25,000, and I basically just said that's too much. That's too much for a video processor, and so I decided to really crazy ideas. I think I'll do one, and we'll see if we can do a company. And so we had the Vision series, and then we had the Vision DVI series, and then we had the Radiance. In 2007, we introduced the Radiance series, the Radiance XD, XE, XS, and then the 2000 and 2100 series. So through the years, we've been advancing video processors, and they've been getting better, and we've been doing more, and we can do more with them. The Radiance Pro, which is still, we think in its prime because you can still do so much with it. It's 10 years old this month. We sold the first unit, I believe, 10 years ago this month. And so it's been a long run. But the thing that we do that's a little different is we use what's called a field programmable gate array. And what that allows us to do is do new algorithms in hardware, just as you would if you hardwired them in a chip, but you get to change them while things are in the field. Prime example was back in the day when they added 3D with the glasses 3D. We took 3 months, we added it to our product, and we did 3D, and everyone else went out of business. All our competitors, we had like 7 competitors at the time, and they went all out of business because they couldn't do that. Same thing with dynamic tone mapping and HDR, because HDR didn't exist when we introduced the Radiance Pro. And so we're all about studio reference quality in your home cinema. And
so what about some of your background? I mean, it's if I have an issue, if I say, well, I want a trim off, but I can't afford a trim off, so I can't make it, right? So what type of background do you have to be able to make these type of this type of component?
Okay, well, my degrees are in electronics engineering and mathematics, and I have what should be another degree, a bachelor's degree in computer science, but Portland State, where I went to college, wasn't certified, so it's a minor for me. So that's kind of a science, engineering, mathematics background for myself. And then I worked for a company called Tektronix, which you guys may know, oscilloscopes. And then I did a startup. And then from that startup, I started up a company called Rendition, and basically to do 3D graphics. And it's kind of a, I guess it's kind of sad stories that we were doing 3D graphics chips. We were called the first 3D accelerator back in the day, back early 90s. And we went from having all the design wins. We had a cell library problem. Our cell provider had some issues. I won't go into the technical details, but we went from having all the design wins to this unknown company you probably never heard of called NVIDIA. 6 months later, had all the design wins.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I never heard of them.
Yeah.
What do they do?
So yeah, that's kind of my background, in electronics, architecture, PC architecture, microprocessor architecture, graphics architecture, 3D graphics architecture. And so we've been doing that, and we started a company called Rendition and then sold it to actually Micron Technology, the DRAM company. But right after they bought it, the DRAM market tanked, and they decided they weren't going to do a lot with it. So I left them, was kind of figuring out what to do, wanted to build a home theater because I thought that was really cool. It was kind of early in the days where, you know, a 7-inch CRT like the Dwin was actually fairly high tech at that time, but you needed a video processor, no question, you needed one. And so I decided I would build one and do that.
Wow.
So that's my background from a technical point of view.
That's impressive. And
yeah,
I have a similar background with computer science, mathematics, so I know that's a complicated background to come from, and it's a fun one. So yeah, it's not surprising that you put that into a great product. So it's really good.
Kind of fun with a math background. Dynamic tone mapping. I was kind of having fun because I had to touch base with my old calculus and some trigonometry and algebra and all that kind of stuff to do some of the math and the curves and stuff that we did for that. So, that was a lot of fun. It's like, oh, I can still do some of this. Probably I've forgotten almost everything, but I could remember enough to do some of that work. But it was a lot of fun. We do design, very small company. Patrick is our software Verilog coder. He does the FPGA stuff, and I do the architecture. I do some of the low-level algorithms, and he does a lot of the implementation into, like, scene detection is a very important part of dynamic tone mapping. So he did all of that.
Wow.
It's really nice to have someone like that. He's worked with Lumagen now for 23 years, basically almost the total life of the company. So
wow.
But
So,
I'm a hobbyist in home theater. That's what I love, and I just made that into a business.
So you mentioned it's a video processor. So for those of the our people that are going to watch this, what is a video processor and what does it do for you?
Excellent question. The things we do are to do a better job than you're going to get with what's in your projector or what's in your television. And so we do deinterlacing. So if you have an old 1080i or 480i or 576i show, we can deinterlace that, make it into progressive, and then scale it up to fit on your 4K projector or television. And so that's primary early in the early 2000s. Scaling your SD up to HD was the primary thing that was judged for a video processor, deinterlacing and scaling. So we still do all of that, but we do a lot more. If you have an anamorphic screen, so we really like having an anamorphic screen. I have a 2.40 screen, so we watch, most movies are 240 now, sometimes they're 235. But there's also a lot of content at 2.0, 2.2, 2.1 even. And so what we can do now with the Radiance Pro is to automatically detect the source aspect and then do all that work for you. So you don't have to manually figure out what's this aspect that we're watching now. Oh, it's 2:1, or it's 2:0, or it's 2:2. So the Lumagen figures all that out for you. And you can do things like have different memories for day and sports mode, night mode, and there's all sorts of settings. So we're very, very key on doing the absolute best quality for the scaling, or for the deinterlacing, or for the dynamic tone mapping. And that's something, if you're watching HDR on a projector, the mastering for HDR is either 1,000 nits or 4,000 nits typically today. That you can have some oddballs, but those are the two that you typically have. But you have an 80 nit or 100 nit projector, you can't just put that in there. It would be way, way too dark. And that was the complaint early with HDR. So we started with the static tone mapping. And then, basically, even when we were doing that, we said, okay, now we're going to need to do dynamic, but let's get the static working. And then we worked on the dynamic tone mapping to analyze every frame of the movie. Actually, we analyze multiple regions of every frame of the movie. We detect the scenes, and then we adjust the transfer function for each scene and each frame. We adjust it, after the beginning, the scene that can change, and we do all that. So if you're watching it on a projector, somebody needs to do this tone mapping, and the Lumagen just does the best job. John Thompson, a producer who actually uses us doing post-production for a major studio. I'm not supposed to say publicly what it is. If you're interested, you can contact me privately. He's now saying I can mention that privately. But John's worked at basically most all the major studios, including Walt Disney. And he said, he can say that kind of stuff, but he uses the Lumagen. He has used the Lumagen for post-production quality check for 8 years now. And what he says is, if it looks good on the Lumagen, I know I've done my job right. And basically, he says our tone mapping is the best. Our image quality is the best of it. And our design is a custom design. So it's a little different. It's very low electrical noise, lower power, and it's a custom ground up design for doing video processing. So our claim to fame is it is custom, and it grows with you over time as we've enhanced the FPGA and added all these kind of features for doing the tone map, automatic aspect ratio control, different setups. You want to have sports, you want to, optimize for different things at different times. We can do all of that work. And if you have a projector, it has basically most of those features. No projector that I know of has auto aspect, but you can manually control it. So our idea is to be seamless. You hook up the Lumagen, you want to calibrate it, but you get a setup, you hook it up, and then you don't even know it's there anymore. It's basically, you can use us to switch. The 5000 series, I put in circuitry to actively de-jitter the HDMI signal to improve audio. So even though we don't process the audio, we don't change it, we don't know what the audio format is, we de-jitter the clock. And if you're a high-end audio guy, you know about de-jitter circuits. And so our 5000 series actually makes the audio sound better when you use us to do the switching.
Yep. So what are the series that you currently have now for the Lumagen? Is it I know that you had the 4000, the 5000.
Right.
And
so the Radiance Pro family, we still sell a few of the 2143s you see on that page, but that's just mostly for somebody had a 1080p theater and something broke, their video processor broke, they buy one of those. We don't sell very many. So we have the 4000 and the 5000 series. Our products you can have from 1 input to 10 inputs, and from 1 output to 4 outputs. So a lot of people use the Lumagen as a central hub of their home theater, and we do switching. We can be set up to do switching faster than you can do if you got to go through an audio processor, because we know what's going on in the signal, and we have multiple input chips and stuff like that. So we can do things and make it a cleaner environment for the end user. Or you can put us on the output of your audio processor. We came out with a 1 in, 1 out at Cedia, and that's become a very hot seller for us because people said, hey, I've already got my audio processor. I just want to make the video look better.
Right.
I'll just plug this in. And so we do that. That's the 4140.
So you talked about the 4000 and the 5000 series. To my knowledge, it does the same video processing, but there's some additional features that you talked about, like the clock and stuff. What are the differences between those two models, the 4000 and
So
5000?
the 4000, we have two versions of the 4000. We have actually three, but 4140 is one in, one out. The 4242 has 4 in and 2 out, and it was the most popular one we had until we came out with the 1 in, 1 out, and now they kind of like split, and they're both very popular. So the 4200 has 2 outputs. Our 4400 has 4 outputs. And so the idea is for the 4400, if you've got a TV and a projector, a lot of people have a screen that comes down in front of their TV. So you need more than one video output. So the 4400 does that.
So Don, if you click here for more information, it should open. So go down the page to the right, next to go up to the top one.
Yeah, go up.
Do the top one. Yeah, click that. It should open up for more information.
There we go.
So from a software point of view, from a firmware point of view, from an FPGA architecture, video features, all of the products are the same. They run the same code. The difference is in the number of inputs, the number of outputs, and the 5000 series has over 30 linear power supplies sprinkled throughout the design to isolate all the various digital supplies from each other, especially for the output chip. So the output chip has also an output buffer that reclocks after the HDMI output chip to get the jitter down. And we typically measure jitter around 10 picoseconds on the clock.
Jeez.
If you don't understand what 10 picoseconds is, it's a really good number. It's a really low number.
Lots of zeros after the dot.
Yep, plenty of zeros. Yeah.
What is that, 10, I think?
Yeah.
I forget. It's been a long time since I've dealt with that.
Yeah.
So as far as the the features, so when I'm feeding my HDR or just SDR signal to the Lumagen, what is the process that it takes in there? Are you converting the HDR? What actually happens? And I know you can set it to do different things, right?
Well, we output HDR in an SDR container. So what we do is we convert it from what HDR is to what the projector can do the best, into basically it's closest to its native, which is a gamma 2.4 SDR signal. It's still HDR content, but we've adapted the content to your projector. And it doesn't matter whether you have a 70 nit projector or a 300 nit projector or 1,000 nit TV, we can adapt for that and adjust the content based on your preferences. So we have 3 main features you can dial in. I want it to be brighter. I want it to have more highlights. I want to, have a higher gamma or stuff. There's all sorts of tuning you can do. There's basically the studio reference, which, we're saying is gamma 2.4, but I like a higher gamma. I like 2.6 for my gamma. It's a little bit more theater-like, commercial cinema-like. So all of those things we have adjustments for. And we basically let you decide what you want, how you want to watch it on your particular projector. Depends on the size of your screen, your projector brightness, what type of, what your gain of your screen is, and all that. But we can adjust for any of those combinations, aspect ratio, variable aspect, masking. We can now control Seymour masking and Stewart film screen masking controllers directly from the Lumagen.
Oh, wow.
So we can do all that auto aspects, so that you don't have to actually manually say, hey, what's this movie I want to select it.
So Jonathan says the Panasonic AE4000 and 8000 had an auto aspect, memory recall, and zoom. Sadly, that was last released in 2012. And then he goes on to say nobody else in the home theater Sorry, my camera's right in the way here. Nobody else in the home theater projector market that I know of is implementing the auto zoom and focus based on aspect ratio changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can attest that I've been playing around with my Lumagen since, I've been able to get it hooked up and going through all the menus and setting it up. And actually, one thing that's very helpful that I found, I'm going to share this screen instead, is on the Lumagen site, there's some like a PowerPoint setup that you can actually walk through, and you can, go through. They have different scenarios set up on here. Jim, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So basically, what this was is if I wanted to instruct someone how to set up a Lumagen, what was the process? So I wrote down the steps, and then I just did basically every page is very, I think, concise about here's what you need to do, here's the menu, here's what you can do. And I've had people who call me and say, hey, Jim, I don't know anything about projectors, and I got mine set up and it looks amazing, and I just followed the slide set. And the only people who seem to have issues are I've had people call and said, it's not working right. And we go through them again and we get to a page 3 or 5 or whatever. And he goes, oh, I didn't think I needed that page. I go, well, you did. You follow it step by step, and it is basically setting up the Lumagen. People will say, hey, it's hard to set up the Lumagen, but with this slide set, people say, no, it's easy to set up the Lumagen. It just tells you what to do, and you can make some choices. It doesn't try to do, if I got a masking system, we don't cover that in the setup. That's usually you've got a dealer. I work with the dealers. They learn how to do it, and then they're set for that. But it talks about the various features. I also have a consumer introduction that talks about what's going on, why, motion interpolation is basically spurned by, industry executives and industry, technical people in the movie industry, because it creates artifacts and stuff. So I have some slides that are for consumers to learn more about video processing. But these, you just follow it, do step by step. And I don't think they're very complicated. Maybe, some people say, hey, I'm not really understanding, and then just give me a call. I think I have a pretty good reputation of I answer the phone. If you need get a question answered by phone or by email, we have a very good reputation for, having the best support in the industry.
Yeah, no, I can definitely attest to that. I've called you a couple different times, and like I said, I left a message, and I think you called me back within an hour. And it was like you said, on a Friday night at like 7 o'clock at night for me. I know was probably only 4 o'clock for you. I think you're on the West Coast, right? So, but still, within the hour or so, I got a call back, and then called you the other day just to confirm for the show and everything else, and picked right up and answered a couple other technical questions for me. So yeah, the only thing that I see with this presentation here is the fact that those of us men that don't like to read manuals,
there's not enough pictures.
Call your dealers. That's where you need a dealer, right?
Oh man, right.
And we do mostly sell through dealers who do the install.
Yeah.
We have a lot of enthusiasts too, but our primary market is through dealers. They do the setup. They have technicians. I work with them, and it is interesting. I've seen over the years is more and more dealers are getting proficient enough. They have the slide set to fall back on, but they don't need to call me as much until they get to something unusual, like a masking control system. I've been working with one customer who has a masking control system, and there was turned out it was a setting. It was causing him problems with a setting in the Strato that he hadn't gotten, and actually turns out he doesn't have a remote, so he's having trouble figuring out how he's going to change it. But so we work through. I have, and I think it's a reasonable thing that I say if you have a Lumagen in the system, our goal is to make the system work, and if you need help with some other stuff, I can help you usually with that. what cables to get, how you set this particular device up, and we can walk through any special cases. And we're very happy to do that. If you're a customer, you want to call, you can call. You can email us. We work directly with customers. And the great thing is that it's usually fairly straightforward to get these things resolved, and then the customer's really happy. And that's what we want. We want the customer to be really happy.
So you spoke about cables, right? I know there's I've read certain things. We all know that HDMI is just an absolute nightmare, right? So, what issues have you run into with the Lumagen with cables? And we saw on some of the slides there about recommending cables. What's the issue with some of the cables that you've run into?
Well, we see a lot of products like projectors and audio processors not have the best HDMI inputs, and so you have to have the best cable to try to get them a signal that has what's called a signal I don't know, some people understand that. HDMI has this thing, you want to have this I, so that that says that you have a quality signal. You want to get that as good as possible. And so I recommend, if you're out to buy HDMI cables, if it's a passive cable, get a 3 meter 48 gigahertz passive cable. If it's passive, that's going to be your best bet. And I call 3 meter length the Goldilocks solution, because the digital porage is just right at 3 meters. The problem is no one tells you what's the right length. Shorter is not better for HDMI because there's cable equalization. The output equalization on the length is. Sorry.
I said she always tells you what the right length is. There's no doubt about that.
So
that's pretty
meters.
That's
it's sometimes hard to wrap. You just make a loop. That's what I've done in our theater. I can actually show you a little bit later.
You have all that documented on your. So my question is, what I've always heard is that you have to pay a dealer to touch the Lumagen. But it sounds like if you're very technical, you could set it up. Or is that true or not true?
I totally disagree with you requiring a dealer. It does make it simpler if you got a dealer who knows what they're doing. They got a calibrator and stuff like that. Like I was saying, those setup slides, I have people who say, I'm not technical at all. I put my theater together. I mounted the projector, and they're fairly hands-on, but they don't understand video. Right. They go through the setup slides.
Totally different.
You have to hook up the right cable. The setup slides talk about the right cables, or they talk to me. You get the right cables, hook everything up, and then you follow the setup slides, and you've got an excellent picture. You could still do calibration on top of that, but if you get a JVC or a Sony in the right modes, they're actually pretty accurate. They're not nearly like the olden days where the projectors were in what we called torch mode and were completely out of whack as far as color and gamma and everything else. They were just basically meant to be bright, but wasn't really that great a picture. So, I believe, and I've had people who said, I'm not technical at all. I use your setup slides. They're fairly handy. They know how to mount a projector on the ceiling and put their screen up and stuff, but they don't know anything about video. They go through the setup slides and they say, I am just amazed. And typically what they say is, I just wish I had bought this a long time ago. This Lumagen really helps the image quality.
And if you want, you can go in and tinker. If you're a tinkerer, you can go in there, and
we have plenty of room to tinker. And you got to be a little bit careful if you go beyond the scope of the setup slides. There's all sorts of things. We have, like, in service mode, you can change settings for dynamic tone mapping.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And back in the day, we had more settings visible in user mode, and we had one particular producer go in and start changing things, and they got it really way out of whack. And we were able to talk, to his house manager and say, okay, do a reset. Let's just.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can always do a reset though. And go
and the thing about it is when you're doing it right. So I think it's a good feature. You can mess with some of the settings, and it'll change on the fly. But for it to actually save, you have to go back to the front screen and save it.
Save everything you made.
And then hit OK a couple times for it to actually save. So you can actually tinker with it a little bit, like you're talking about, Paul, and it'll do some changes on the fly, and then you save it, and then then it'll become part of your setup. But if you don't save it, whatever you had prior, it'll revert back to that, right?
And
I'm correct in that, right, Jim?
Yeah.
And you can save, like, if you did a configuration or something like that, can you save that? And then, like, if I brought it to someone else's theater and they had a different setup that I had configured or whatever, just to show it off. Let's say I'm trying to show off my Lumagen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have, like, a profile for JVC, Epson, or whatever. Can you download and save configs to where you can always have your settings?
Yeah, there's several things you can do. There's a local backup where you can save it. You have to. We don't actually publish it, but if you ask me, I'll tell you what it is. You can save to a local backup, and then you can take it to your friend's house, do a factory reset, do everything you want, do lots of saves, get everything just dialed in, and then when you're back, you just reload the saved backup and you're back to where you were.
So it sounds like if you're technical enough to know to ask the right question, you'll provide information. It's like, oh yeah, that's over here.
Yeah, you don't want to put it out there, right, for everyone.
Yeah. You don't want people in there messing it up.
Yeah,
like,
that is really intended for dealers who don't want customers who are hands-on messing things up. Yeah. We had one case where I think the dealer was in Florida, the customer was in Texas. The customer messed it all up, and he had to fly back out.
Wow!
That's where the dealer can set that up, and then all you have to say, well, go to the save menu, restore from backup. But you can also download it to a PC. We have a config reader. You can download your configuration, and we recommend people do that. For the off chance that your unit goes south, you would be able to get a new unit, just load that in, and you're ready to go.
Maybe it needs a repair, power supply, got lightning struck or something, and you're like, oh yeah,
exactly. Lightning is a fairly common way to take out a video processor.
Yes,
especially in Florida.
I have mine hooked into a watt box, so hopefully that'll be enough if something like that ever does happen.
They say it is, but lightning.
Lightning has a mind of its
lightning
own,
is
right?
lightning. Yeah, it's like
better
water.
to be protected than not, though.
Yeah. So,
I'm a big believer. If especially if you're in a lightning area, you have a double pole, single throw, and isolate your system from power whenever you're not using it, and that will help. That's the best prevention.
That's a true way.
Yeah, that's what I do. Being in Texas here, once I look out the window and the weather is looking funny, I go straight to my projector, out the wall. I pull it out the power source. But Jim, one of the points that I hear a lot of Lumagen owners talk about is the low latency for users who enjoy gaming and want to game in the home theater. Was that by design, or how did you come up with that? Are you a gamer? How did you design it to have that level of low latency?
That's an interesting question. Back when we first did the Radiance in 2007, 2008, I was a big believer in Genlock for lip sync. But we had gamers who say, hey, I want a low latency as possible.
And how ironic as we're talking about latency.
We can do that. We have an FPGA. We can do exactly what it's fixed at 3 milliseconds, which for the gamers I've talked to said that's fast enough for me. If you're in a competition, no, you probably just have a PC monitor. But if you're playing in your theater, 3 milliseconds delay fixed is very, very good. Plus, with the Genlock, it works great for audio, for movies and stuff. So you have a fixed delay, and your video processor isn't making lip sync worse. So we have a lot of people very sensitive. Actually, I don't know if we want to get to that, but I actually bought one of these Sync 1.2s recently. It measures the lip sync, and I talk to people about lip sync. That's maybe getting off the topic that we were.
No,
but
it's fine.
I set harp string plucks. It's the best that I've found to get accurate lip sync. And so with Genlock on, I was able to do that with our Strato here. And then I got the Sync 1-2 and the Spears and Munsell disc, which I recommend to everybody to have. They have a test pattern that does lip sync, and they use this. And I found out I was within 3 milliseconds, because I was telling people I can tell the difference plus or minus about 10 milliseconds. And, I showed that. So Genlock is a huge feature that I hadn't talked much about before, but that plus the game mode gives you 3 millisecond fixed for the best gaming through a video processor with all the features. The Lumagen, you can have all the features on when you're in game mode, and it's a 3 millisecond delay.
So when you're processing the video, right? When the Lumagen's processing the video, how far out in front is it actually looking?
We basically with in normal movie mode, we look at an entire frame, and then in the vertical blank time before the next frame, we decide what to do, and we do it. We don't have any extra delay. So with Genlock on, including dynamic tone mapping, it's 1 frame plus 3 to 5 milliseconds. It depends on the input to output aspect ratio changes. That's kind of a nit, but it varies about 3 milliseconds. If you have Genlock on 1 frame plus 3 milliseconds. So we're not having to have a bunch of frames. We decide what to do in that time between the end of the frame and the beginning of the next frame.
That's crazy.
Sub 10 milliseconds, regardless, or below that. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Now, what was the tool that you used to measure your?
This is called Sync 1-2.
Okay.
It's made in the UK, and it's not that commonly known. But and I just got mine. I've been meaning to get one for a couple of years, but I finally got mine, and I was like, oh, I wonder how good I was able to get it. I go 3 milliseconds. I'm pretty happy. That it kind of shows me that you can see, especially with music, you can see very, very small variations. So if you have a frame of variation in your video processor or more, then you're going to see that lip sync, especially if you're watching music.
That's cool.
Yeah, that lip sync actually drives me absolutely insane. If I'm watching a movie and the lip sync is off, I can't watch it. It's just like, and for some reason, when I had the Zapiti, where I had my living room system set up with animated movies, the lip sync would be way off, but with regular movies, it would work perfectly fine. I don't know if you have any insight to that, Jim, or not, but it was really bad, and there was points to where I just had to I shut the movie off, and my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I can't watch it like this. It's driving me insane."
Yeah.
So the content providers are supposed to keep audio and video lip sync perfect, no delays, no differences, 0. Unfortunately, in reality, there are variants. Even like on an Apple TV, you can go to one provider and then go to another provider, and sometimes there's going to be a variation in lip sync. There's not supposed to be, but there is. There's actually a feature in HDMI that you're supposed to be able to tell all this information and give it to the source and let it, do it. But as far as we can tell, that doesn't work well. It's not been implemented well by the various players. And so that's not really something you can depend on. And so, like with a Strato, was what I use for my movie server. I think you said, Johnny, you had the Strato.
Yes.
That's very consistent. We use a Trinoff in our demo theater for Lumagen. That's very consistent. You can program. And so what I've done on that is I've done my lip sync. I set the Lumagen to 48 milliseconds of additional video delay. That's something we have as programmable additional video delay. And then the Trinoff has an intrinsic delay. I think it's around 70 if I'm remembering correctly. And then I add another 30. And what that I can do is that gives me some variance. I can use the Lumagen's variable video delay to compensate for sources that are different. So I can have the different memories. I can have one where that 48 milliseconds I set it to 16 milliseconds, or I set it to 80 milliseconds, and then I can compensate for those smaller variances between the various sources. They're not supposed to be different, but we do see that happen.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like I said, that was always a pet peeve of mine, that if I would have to be messing with my Denon and whatever. I had the Denon 6300, changing lip sync milliseconds and stuff like that, because I just couldn't watch it when it wasn't like that. So it's very nice to hear that you're actually processing on the same exact frame that's there too, rather than taking 5 frames or 6 frames in advance and then feeding it to us at a later time.
Yeah. So, Jim, about non-linear stretch, right? The Lumagen does support that. Do you support the vertical non-linear stretch, or is this a technical decision?
That's actually an interesting question. Back in 2004, when we added nonlinear stretch horizontally, people asked me to add vertical nonlinear stretch. And I said, let me look at that. Oh, that looks awful. I'm not going to do that. That's
So it's a technical
I'm
decision.
sorry. That's right. Strong word. Technically, yes. Technically, I say that's stupid. But it just doesn't look right. So if you want to do vertical stretch, do a linear stretch. It's one thing if you're stretching people horizontally. If you got a football game, a lot of people love to take football games and stretch them out to 240 on their screen. But if you notice, the guy running is always in the center of the screen, pretty much. And so basically, in that region, our nonlinear stretch is linear. It's stretching, but it's stretching in a linear way for the width you program. So you can program the width, you can program the stretch, you can program top and bottom crop to allow it to not stretch as much. But for that, or talking head, news programs, the person sitting in the middle of the screen, nonlinear stretch looks fine. I think it looks awful for movies. I would never want to do that, because if you have a car driving across the screen, it's going really fast, it slows down in the middle, and then it goes really fast again as it gets on the other side, because you're stretching the image.
It makes it look faster coming in and then going out, though.
Still doesn't look good.
It's like a warp.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that I find acceptable. I've used my friends as guinea pigs, and I've stretched movies vertical or horizontally by 10% just to see if anyone's going to notice. And I can tell you, no one's ever noticed. Even at the end of the movie, when I say, "Hey, did you notice anything?" "Oh, it looked amazing." And I go, "Well, did you notice it was stretched?" No one did that. They nod. "No, it looked fine to me." And so linear stretching up to about 10%, I find pretty imperceptible. So if you got a 240 screen, what we do is we have what we call an output aspect per input aspect. So if you have a 240 screen, you can say, hey, if it's 2.2 content, just the output aspect is 2.2, even though it's gone. And so we're going to stretch that to 2.4, 10% stretch, 9% stretch. And it's going to look fine. People are going to have gained weight a little bit. That's whatever. Same thing vertically.
Yeah.
If you take, if you have a 2.0 screen, in fact, a lot of people, if people want to watch TV and movies and they're not purists, I tell people consider a 2.1 screen, because you're kind of in the middle. And a nonlinear stretch of 16:9 to 2.1 looks really pretty good. You can do that without having too much stretch. And then 2.1, we stretch 240, crop a little bit off the sides, and that'll fill your screen. So we have a lot of customers who want to fill the screen. And if you're going to do that, then a 2.1, 2.2, 2.0 is a much better aspect for your screen than 2.40 or 1.78, either one.
Okay. That's good to know.
So when we talked a little bit, I know we're jumping around a little bit here, but we talked about when you break the video down, it goes out into an SDR container, right?
Uh-huh.
What color spaces are you capable of doing in the Lumagen?
We can convert to and from. Basically, input sources are either going to be 709 or 2020, Rec 2020, BT.2020. And for the output, it depends on your projector, what you do, and whether you're doing a calibration. If you're not calibrating, what we do is we can convert mathematically 709 to 2020. There's industry standard mathematics to do that. It's just the matrix. It's pretty simple, you know, as these things go. So we can convert the 709 to 2020. And the nice thing about that is if you got like a JVC projector or a Sony projector, if you could output both SDR 709 content and HDR 2020 content as 2020 to get the extra colors, then you don't have to tell your projector to change modes, because we're outputting HDR in an SDR container. You would have to manually change, oh, this is really SDR, this is HDR. But by doing it outputting in 2020, you don't have to do anything to your projector. It just does the right thing all the time. It's always 2020 mode. And so we mathematically can convert. If you're doing a calibration and you've got a projector like a JVC or Sony who run around P3, so P3 is the DCI color space, sort of. DCI has a standard for their color space. It doesn't have the same white point, but we do P3 with a D65 white point. I'm throwing out some numbers to people that might not be as technical, but that is the color basically is based on the color of stars. So D65 is a particular color of white. And so we can do P3 D65 for projectors like the JVCs and the Sony, that's about the range that they can actually manage. And then you calibrate to that. So you actually, if you have CalMan or Color Space calibration software, you actually calibrate to P3. We convert it to P3. And then what we do is, if it's 2020 HDR content, we actually desaturate the colors so you don't get clipping at that P3 space, because you can have colors outside of P3, not very common, but it can happen, especially in animation. They actually can give you colors outside. So we desaturate that so that you don't see that clipping, but we can convert SDR 709 to P3. We can convert HDR 2020 to SDR, and then color space convert it to P3.
Wow. Yeah. So the differences, you talk about the colors. Can you explain those a little bit? 709, 2020 to P3. What for the audience that don't know, what are the differences in those color spaces? Do you know that off the top of
it's
your
called
head?
the color gamut. How much of the human visual system's color range can you do? So the gamut is how much of that you do. 709 was basically when we first had color back in the 50s. That's what the color they thought they could do. So they limited to Rec 709. They made a lot of good trade-offs back then. The way they do the color, never twice the same color, but still it was a great system to get color in the first place. So that was 709. And then over time, movie theaters added what's called the DCI spec, the Digital Cinema Initiative spec, which expanded that to the P3 color space, which is a larger gamut. You can represent more colors. If you have a nice magenta or some really rich saturated color, it's going to look better if your projector can do P3. Assuming the source is 2020 HDR, it's going to look better on a P3 projector than it does on a 709. It's going to be more accurate. And then now we're having projectors that are RGB lasers who are going to do what they say 100% of 2020. So the 2020 color space is well, okay, I don't want to get too technical, but if you look at, it's called the CIE diagram. There's different standards, different years and stuff, but it's kind of a teardrop. And basically that teardrop is the entire range of human vision. And so if 709 is a smaller part, then P3 is a larger, and 2020 is, if they're basically at a triangle that's as big as they can make it inside that teardrop. That's not the color space you can deal with. Movie producers now use something called ACES, ACES, and that is a larger than the human space. Mathematically, you can do colors that you can't see in that color space. And they use that for their editing so that there's always and enough colors where they can represent any color you can consider, even if humans can't see it. And then they convert it to whatever your standard you're doing. If it's an SDR movie, they convert it to 709. If it's a HDR movie, they convert it to 2020.
Yeah. In simple terms, it's like converting a 200 meg photo. You know, you can crop it and you'll never even know because you don't need to see that much resolution. And it's like, oh, wow, that looks like you took that photo, even though it may just be a section of that. With the color space, it's kind of the same. You're able to edit digitally, or just like sound, right? There's the 192K, and it's like, you don't hear 192K, but sure. But you do need that in editing and sound recording and stuff like that, because the more you edit, compress, and stretch and do that, you don't want to be able to hear any digital or see any digital edits. And it sounds like with that, that's what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
So I think your example is good. So if you look at a 709 image, it's going to look good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the image that was really supposed to be in a 2020 range, in 2020, you're going to say, oh, wow, how did I think that looked good?
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
That's true. So let's talk about one aspect that, I'm sure a lot of people want to know about, right? The future of Lumagen in terms of the products, right? We did see a report about a new product that is in the works. Now, you probably cannot say too much about it, but let's ask: is the Artisan still on track?
Yes. Yeah. So I showed this at CEDIA. But this is the switchboard for the Artisan. You get it 8 in, 2 out, HDMI 8K chips. Those power supplies, these little cases are Faraday cages, and they keep your electrical noise down, which is very important to keep, if you're into audio, you really want to have the lowest electrical noise, EMI, electromagnetic interference, in any product that you put in. And that's what Lumagen Design does. Basically, if you look at the Lumagen's electrical signature versus a PC, for example, you're going to see that the Lumagen is, very quiet electrically compared to the PC, especially when you look at the EMI and the noise on the HDMI signals and stuff. So this is a switchboard. It gets plugged into a FPGA board, and that is exactly the same architecture that we have on the 5000 series, except for this one. Actually, I put the microprocessor on the switchboard, but it's the same, where we basically can put a processor and then the FPGA to do the actual video processing. It goes to the FPGA, comes back out. So we are working on that. We're saying it's 2025, and we're still on track to introduce this year. People have asked questions about releases on the current products, and they've slowed down a little bit. And I think it's easy to guess why that might be, is because we are working on the Artisan. That is a big task, very similar in architecture, but the Artisan will have, for example, right now we have a 4-2-2 pipeline, which is half res chroma. Again, I'm getting technical, but luminance in a movie, a consumer release, TV, whatever, chrominance has 1/4 the color, has 1/4 the resolution of the intensity. In our current pipeline, we up that to half, which is plenty for consumer video. However, when they're creating games, a lot of times they're created in RGB, red, green, blue, full res chroma. The colors have the full resolution. And so the Artisan will have a 444 pipeline specifically for gaming. You really don't need it for video.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, 420, right? Is what video.
420. Anything that's better than that, you can choose when you're going to convert it. At the end of the projector output, it is RGB. So somewhere it has to be converted to basically full res chroma by upsampling. But you can choose where you do that. In the Radiance, we basically do that on the output if you're going to want RGB output, or the projector can do it right before it drives the screen. In the Artisan, you will be able to have a full 444 pipeline in there.
Wow.
The precision is going to be bigger than the current. Currently, the video back end is all 12 bits. Video processing in there, all that's all 12 bits. And we're looking at, do we stay at 12 or do we go a little bit higher? So there are things we're still trying to decide in the Artisan. It will support 8K. And the big thing about that for me is 4K 120.
Yep.
If I can get on my soapbox for a moment, I don't think consumer video should ever be 8K. It doesn't make sense because you're limited by streamers or the bit density you can put on a disk.
Yep.
And you'd be, in my opinion, and I think this could be proven if someone took the time to actually do the testing, using all the bits there with the same algorithms, the same compression algorithms, I think you're going to find that you're not going to ever see an improvement by having that be done at 8K versus 4K. And
totally agree. But did you know that, and it hasn't even begun to touch the consumer market yet, but they have discs now that can do like a petabyte. And I'm like, the only reason 8K would make sense is if that could be brought home to the consumer and you could put a movie in that's like, full like 8K, 20K, whatever resolution, and you had a big enough screen to even make a difference, because then you're getting into the, well, how far away, how big, you get into
then you're gonna buy your
you're getting all into all kinds of things.
You're gonna pay $100 for.
We're a long way away from
Yeah.
So getting back up on my soapbox, if you're sitting one screen width away, 4K is below human perception.
Yep.
Now,
absolutely.
I'm not going to argue against oversampling in the projector, but compressing to a higher resolution than humans can see is really, I don't think, the best use of the bit bandwidth you have. Whatever bit bandwidth you have, whatever algorithms, as long as they're the same for 4K and 8K, and streaming, basically not everyone, lots of people, most people are getting all their content by streaming. Streaming is always going to have a certain bandwidth that they're going to be willing to give you as a consumer. And for that bandwidth, I think 4K will always be the better choice for content. However, the Artisan will have 8K support. So if you want to send us 8K, you'll be able to, we'll be able to output 8K, and there's some advantages to that. The problem with 8K output is for 4K content is you can't do JVC projectors do 4096 wide, but there's not a double that 8192 width mode. So you can't get those at that extra light. If you go to a JVC, and we can take and output 4096 by 2160, and that gives you 13% extra light without an anamorphic lens. In fact, that 13% is actually usually accounted for as you go to an anamorphic lens. They're assuming you're going to that wider mode, and they're taking credit for that 13%. But that's really just because you're sending the projector into that particular mode, 4096 by 2160.
So with the new edition, is there any thought into, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but making it more of a web-based type of GUI or something that you can access through UI or something like that?
We are talking to providers to try to do that, and we have a long ways to go on that. You can, if you want to control the Lumagen with IP, you can do that today. You get global cache. You can, and we have people using it with our control system. Doing a web page is something I'm trying to find the right company to work with on that. We've had several tries, and they haven't been successful. So we're still trying to partner up, and the goal is, at least initially, it'll be an external box and do a web page so that you can talk to the Lumagen via the web page if you want to.
Okay. So yeah, so if I'm a dealer and I have a customer, if I'm a dealer in Florida and I live in South Florida and it's 7 hours away to my customer, I can possibly log in and control it.
Yes, yeah. So,
Very good.
but we do have a Crestron driver, and you can do an iPad. So we have a Crestron driver. This is an iPad application that
Let me
works
zoom in
with
on you. Hold on.
Crestron, and if you have that, you can actually do what you're saying with a Crestron controller. You can have parts of that with someone has written a Control 4 driver, and you can do pieces of this, but I don't think they have this particular aspect. This tells you what the input is, what the output is, gives you all the information that we can report on the screen.
Wow.
So you can do that now if you have a control system, especially the Crestron. The others you can do it. It's just that we haven't really coded that. Someone actually would have to code that. So people do that. We have people who will put a PC next to the Lumagen, and they just call into the PC and they can talk to the Lumagen, they can do updates and stuff like that. So we don't have it yet as an official product, but we have people using mini PCs or a small PC. People buy an old PC on the internet and use it, $100, they get an old PC, and that gives them remote access to the Lumagen.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
shoot.
So
Nowadays,
you're doing that through RS-232?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are controlled by RS-232 or IR.
Okay.
So if you have a control system, that's what like we do here in our theater. The Crestron converts any commands I give on my iPad here into RS-232 to control the Lumagen.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was asking to do, like let's say the mini mini PC, or like you said, a cheap older model PC that just gives you access. All you really need to do is connect an internet to it, and needs to have probably very minuscule processing power, right? To control the Lumagen. So yeah, that's fantastic. I didn't know that people were doing that.
Yeah, just as long as you can remote log into your PC, you can then, it's just like you're there with the PC talking to the Lumagen.
Yeah. So the Artisan will have support for Dolby low latency, the LLDV. Do the current models support that? The low latency Dolby Vision?
Yes, that's actually a very interesting and controversial question. We added Dolby LLDV, Dolby Vision LLDV support. Not officially. We're not a licensee, but Patrick, my engineer, is really good, and he figured it all out. John Thompson. I should be careful. He's a producer, and he actually. I guess I can say this. He had the Dolby guys look at it, and he said, it's the best implementation of Dolby LLDV. The rub is the players don't do it right. There's always an issue with the players, and
that's
what we're finding,
LLDV, right?
Yes, yeah. So LLDV is kind of the black sheep of the family for Dolby Vision. Dolby wants to have it be in the TV, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So there's best we can tell, this is what I'm told, so I'm just referring what I'm told, is there is apparently an issue in the SDK. That's the software development kit for people doing LLDV that raises black level. And so that cannot be corrected unless Dolby
SDK is updated.
That's what I'm being told. This is a great product. We did a great job. I'm trying to be careful, but there is an issue.
Please be careful. So let's not. And so there's the FEL layer and the MEL layer, and streamers typically only do the MEL layer, which is 10 bits, which is basically the same as HDR10, which doesn't have a raised black. The other issue in players is they tend to have their own tone mapping. And so
you tell it how bright the player, you tell it how bright your TV is or projector, and then they're doing some tone map. We don't want them to do tone map. We want them to give us the data, but a lot of them don't. They tone map it, which means you're double tone mapping, which is not a good thing. HDR10, you don't have that problem. You can set the players to just send us the data. Let us do it. Let Lumagen do it. And so right now, other than a disc player, like a Panasonic 9000, there's really no reason to use the LLDV. Strato, the Strato V can do Dolby Vision, but it's just the base layer, the 10-bit layer. And so there's really no advantage versus HDR10 at this time. I mean, there's certainly, with a software release, I expect Kaleidoscape could give you better content. And then it might make more sense to do that.
Okay.
And if they don't have that issue with the raised black levels, they could do content that's 422. They could do content that's a higher bit rate, 12 bits and stuff, because they have a disc. They could put more bits on the disc and then get that improvement. And just kind of as a side comment is, I'm much more in favor of better 4K than I am in 8K for content.
Yeah.
Better 4K, go to 422, go to 444, go to 12 bits.
Yeah.
If you have the bit rate to do that, that can make sense. And I think it makes more sense than trying to do 8K for content.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of room for improvement in 4K. We don't need to be going up to 8K just yet.
So let's talk about, you said the product's been around for quite some time, right? So the Radiance Pro you said was 10 years ago, correct?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the upgrade, not the upgrade, but let's say the firmware update process. Since it's not, I guess, a web-based type of a device, how do I get those updates that you're pushing out?
So you need an IBM PC or compatible, or you need a Windows emulator on a Mac if you've got an Apple product, and you download a file. And then inside the Lumagen, we have a USB to serial adapter. So you need to figure out on your Windows program what COM port that is. You open the program. It's a .exe. You may have to tell your virus protection, yeah, this one's okay. And then you just run that update. So you need a USB cable to connect to your PC. You download the program. Once you've done it once, you basically, the COM port, you basically say update, and it runs the updater, and you get it. Doesn't change your configuration. Now, if we add a new feature, then that feature may not have been set up. You may have to set that one up, but the current features that you have, the settings are all going to work.
So is it, let's say, like in my instance, I've had the Lumagen for 4 years sitting in a closet as I've been building my theater, right? Do I need to do step-by-step updates, or can I just download them all at once, or in your latest update?
The very latest update. And since you haven't done anything, after you do the update, I would recommend you do a factory reset and then a save. So that way you're going to get all the current defaults, because there's a lot of stuff from 4 years ago that didn't exist then that do exist now. You want to have the current defaults, which is just do a factory reset after you do the update.
Okay, very good. And that's just, like you said, connected through the serial port, right? The serial port cable, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can use serial, but there's a USB, a USB B connector, full size printer. You get a printer cable. You plug the PC end in the PC and the other end into the Lumagen. But internally, it's actually a USB to serial adapter. So it's really still a serial protocol, but everyone has a USB cable hanging around, because that's what we see. People get the Lumagen and they're throwing everything out, and then, oh, I don't have that USB cable. Oh, but I've got a printer cable. I'll just use it.
Yeah, and I think mine actually came with it. You supply the cable, right?
It's amazing how many people somehow misplace it or don't know where it is, at least.
Yeah, I actually put when I installed it in the rack, I actually put it on the same shelf so that I know exactly where it is.
Put a sticker on it. Hey, I'm gonna make my. It's gonna say Lumagen. It's gonna say Lumagen next, right on there.
on the
That way
speaker, right?
you can just screw it onto the cable and
Yeah, with a 3D
realize
printer, right? Just print it
Lumagen
out.
cable. Don't throw away.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's it.
Let's see.
Let's see what we got in the. Let's answer some questions in the chat here. So
like
it says, does Jim have an update on the Lumagen? Yeah, we went through that. So on the Artisan, let's see. Anybody have any questions for Jim about the Lumagen? Go ahead and type them in. I think you've already popped this up earlier in the show, but yes, Chris Deering does do off-site setups for profiles for Lumagen. He's a Lumagen dealer, and a big advocate for this actual product. So, I mean, from what I understand, he's one of the best. So, by all means,
Oh,
if
absolutely.
you're
Chris is top tier all the way. I like it when Chris sells a Lumagen because I know his customers are going to be happy. He does a great job. He does the setup. He provides a configuration file. So what he does is if he sells a Lumagen to a customer that's like maybe not local to him, is he'll send us do a configuration file, talk to the customer, help him get his projector set up, and then send us the configuration file, which other dealers couldn't do if they wanted to. But he sends us a configuration file. We load it on the unit. We ship it to the customer. And then all I have to do is plug it in.
oh wow,
Oh,
so
wow.
you actually loaded on for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very nice.
That's good. So now I have a question for, the certain people that buy the Lumagen on the used market. Is there a process for like verifying, right? If you buy a Lumagen from the used market, can they reach out to you to verify, is this product still good? Is it up to date? Do you have a process for that, for making sure that the profile moves over to the new product owner, things like that?
If you buy a used Lumagen, the first thing you do, you should do a factory reset and a save so that it's clean.
Okay.
Today, I answered a question from a customer who says, well, it turns out he already bought it, but he went, how old is this unit? And so I looked at the serial number up and said, it's 4 years old. He goes, oh, thank you very much. So I'm happy to do that for customers. I always recommend to customers that if you're going to buy a used unit, reach out to me. I'm happy to look up a serial number and say, okay, that unit was sold in 2015, and that's an old unit, 10 years old. Maybe it's getting a little old to be buying it, at 10 years. So I talk to the customers and talk about what they are. We do, we're gonna answer your questions basically if you buy a used unit. But if you got a 7-year-old unit, you bought it used, I've already helped the person through everything there. Maybe they've got the new Lumagen since then, but I'm not remaking money if I'm sending support.
Yeah.
What I do for those people is I point them at Chris Deering. hey, Chris, he will help you. If it's more than a few minutes, it's like, just go to Chris.
Chris will
that,
help you.
that is synergistic. We're arm's length with Chris. He doesn't work for us. We don't pay him. But he likes Lumagen, and so I send people to him for support when they buy a used unit.
Yeah, he's a great guy. You always hear positive stuff about him, so he's always willing to help out too. That's good.
Yeah. And we have other great dealers out there too, but Chris is really very technically astute.
So guys, I'm having a little problem with my headphones. Give me 1 second.
And understands how to set up the Lumagen.
Yeah, that's great. So how to your theater, what obviously you wanted the processor, so that's that's where you were like, hey, I can do better, you know, and hey, I appreciate that. That's amazing. So with the newer technology, obviously you are just, you know, keeping ahead of the curve and all that stuff. As far as like you said, it's like there's only so much you can do inside of a projector and make it, you know, affordable. You know, it's like sure, if I sold you know, a projector for 200 grand, it would have a Lumagen built into it, right? Equivalent. But who's buying that, right? So what are your where do you are you going to a professional market eventually, like a cinema market, or are you staying in like the prosumer market in your line?
There's getting into a commercial. We'd have to be DCI, Digital Cinema Initiative. That's totally different encryption and standards, and they hold that very close to the vest.
Yeah, they do.
So from that aspect, no. But the Lumagen gets used as an ancillary piece on a lot of theaters that do. They have meetings or they want to show a consumer content. They'll have a Lumagen in the theater. This is more common in Europe than it is in the US. We do see that. So it's not the main DCI movie. It's the ancillary stuff. So you can do that.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
However, in studio work, we're not going to be in the path of the process of processing the video, but we're getting used for qualifying content. John Thompson, I mentioned, producer, he uses the Lumagen. He uses that to compare to the studio reference masters. And what he says is that if you know what the image is supposed to look like, you're going to pick the Lumagen because we have the best match to his studio reference masters in terms of gamma and color of any other, you know, of any product out there for doing HDR mapping, you know, dynamic tone mapping. Gotcha. So we do get used in that. We, I guess I can't. I'm trying
yeah. Don't.
Yeah. You don't have to go into.
Yeah. If there's even a hint of no, don't even say
but
it.
We're also getting used in audio studios because they have various sources, and as we were talking about earlier, they need perfect lip sync, and so they use our Genlock and they use our video delay because they've got different sources. They've got professional sources, they've got consumer sources, and this one gentleman using the Lumagen basically has multiple delays programmed so that he can get proper lip sync. Studio sound engineers in the studio are extremely sensitive to lip sync, and they want the Lumagen because that gives them the best lip sync.
Yeah.
So talk about that Genlock that you have. If you can explain that a little bit more in depth, what does it do and what is it? What's the purpose?
So you want I think the simplest way to say it is you want every input frame to come and be displayed out of the Lumagen exactly one time, never twice and never skipped. What Genlock does is it keeps the clocks, the syncs from the input and the output in lockstep. So you never lose a frame and you never double a frame. The other video processor out there doesn't do that. So you're going to get a doubled frame or you're going to get a skipped frame because they don't have a Genlock feature. So the Genlock is a way to ensure one frame in is one frame out, and the delay from the input to the output is constant. So you have a shot at having decent lip sync.
So, and that would be really great for like 24 hertz movies, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 20, very important because you got a 42 milliseconds of frame time, a walk. And one of the things I was able to do with the Sync 1.2 was I actually watched it for like 20 minutes. I turned off Genlock and I just watched the audio lip sync move by 42 milliseconds.
Oh, wow.
And then snap back and walk, by 42 milliseconds. Now, if that's in the video processor, if you have that same thing in the projector, you can actually double that time. And so in the RP23 committee, the Media Video Standards Committee, we're actually talking about allowing for 2 frames worth. But it's actually one of those sad things that once you see lip sync, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And so if you start to notice it, you say, oh, that doesn't look right. You're going to start paying attention, and even subliminally, you're going to say, this isn't right. Something's wrong. And so then you're going to be sensitive to lip sync. I have gotten very sensitive to lip sync because I'm paying attention to it.
Yeah, I can't stand it, man.
I'm sensitive to it, but I've literally overwrote my brain to a certain threshold. It's like, oh, if it's like 40 milliseconds, like, no, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
But once it gets to a certain like 30, 25, I'm like, okay, I know it's there, but I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah.
And,
so I have different thresholds. Yeah. For music, I have one threshold of sync I can tolerate. For movies, it's a little bit longer. But I've gotten myself to be fairly sensitive to it, which
that's cool, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's a bummer. You're like, oh, I can't unsee it. Like, oh,
yeah, and it's like seeing frame drops and frame doubles. You get sensitive to that as well.
So is the Lumagen, is it producing any frames? Is it adding frames to I guess smooth.
No, you're talking about motion interpolation.
Correct.
I worked on motion interpolation around 2000. I discovered all the problems with motion interpolation. And so, as John Thompson, my producer friend, says, it's a fool's errand to try to do it in a single device. They actually do it to convert movies to TV use because they have to show them at 60 hertz.
Yep.
And so they do it, but he says they do it with a room full of GPU-based computers and human intervention on every scene. So in my I have a consumer document. I describe why we're not going to do motion interpolation because I call it a demo feature. You can certainly do demos, and they usually do them wrong because they're showing you 60 hertz, the 24 hertz movie at 60 hertz, which creates the problem that they're trying to show you that they've corrected. And so filmmaker mode is very important to talk about, and that is the filmmakers hate motion interpolation because it changes things. Like this, there was a syncopated in Baby Driver. There's a syncopated scene that motion interpolate gets rid of the syncopation. It loses the effect that the director wanted. You're going to create artifacts. You have an object that's in scene for one frame. There's no motion vector, and motion vectors are how you do things. Or you have a scene cut. You don't have the next frame. You only have the previous, so you don't really have the right data. So there's just enough problems. I'm very sensitive to artifacts. And so I don't want artifacts. I don't want to do anything that's going to create artifacts as motion interpolation will. It's guaranteed to create artifacts because there are going to be cases it cannot resolve. Things that are in one frame. Things that are moving, a changing profile, like a bird flapping its wings, people walking. They're changing profile. And the way to do that, you actually have to detect the objects. You have to interpolate the motion in the object. And if the bird is flapping the wing, there's information coming and going. You cannot perfectly, produce that wing flap at a higher rate. You can produce something that's approximate, but you can't do it right. And so I, for one, am very opposed to motion interpolation. I know people disagree with me, but I just don't think that makes sense. Filmmaker mode exists because movie professionals agree that you should show 24 hertz movies at 24 hertz. That's the way they were designed to be shown. Another problem with motion interpolation, you've got film blur. You've got motion blur of objects moving, So you've got this blurry object. To do motion interpolation, you have to deblur it, which you really can't do, and then create that object in detail and then reblur it, which is a hard job, even if you could.
The reblurring, that's what messes with me, because I feel like when any of that is on, I feel like I have more focus on things that in real life I would not have focus on.
Yeah.
So then when I'm done watching that movie and I walk around, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, you're just like
it's like, oh no, like everything's like I'm trying to focus on like 2 feet and 20 feet in front of me. That's what I feel like that does. That true motion or motion interpolation stuff does to my vision. It's kind of weird. It like pulls my eyes like in multiple depths, if you would.
Yeah.
And I always notice it, even if it's on just a hair. Like I can handle it if it's on a hair, but I still notice it. But it takes me a while. I'm like over here like
Yeah. So we have a question and updates for. Okay, go on, Jim. No, you go on, Jim. You can finish, and we'll pull up the question.
Oh, so I don't like motion interpolation. There are people who do like motion interpolation. I will admit that, but I think I'm using John Thompson's name a lot. He's a good friend now. We become friends because he likes our product. Again, he doesn't work for us or anything. He actually does comparisons for movie directors and producers that come through his studio of us and the other options. And he says 100% of the time people choose the Lumagen, and that's without motion interpolation. One time he said if he were to show the talent the movie with motion interpolation, they would kill him, bring him back to life, and kill him again, because it just is not something they want to see that way. They want to see their movies the way they, produce them and stuff.
Yeah. So we have a question from Bobby. Any future updates coming for the Radiance Pro?
Yes. Yeah. So we just produced released a new release. I think it's like 302.25, and it was mostly, and I think completely, a bug fix release. So right now, I don't think it comes as a surprise that we are spending most of our time on the Artisan.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is they're very compatible. The base design of the Artisan from an FPGA point of view is very much the Radiance Pro based design. So as we do things, if we decide to add new features, right now there's not really a lot that we're planning on, but something could come up and we'll be adding it, improving it, aspects, stuff like that, masking control, those kind of features. What people are telling us is the dynamic tone mapping is the best. John Thompson, my producer friend, again using his name in vain here, but he says it's just the best by far. And that the competitive dynamic tone mappings, even Dolby Vision, is not as good.
So let's talk about. You mentioned aspect a little bit ago. One of the updates, is in one of your recent updates, were you able to do the variable aspect ratio, like the let's say the scenes from Interstellar? To where it goes from 16:9 to 2:4. Is the Lumagen able to do that? And is that something that you've recently had an update on?
So we have instant auto aspect that will do that. If you have an anamorphic screen, you do not want that, in my opinion. The problem is IMAX is a marketing thing that they have the 2.40 and then 1.9 for Top Gun Maverick, let's say. To me, it's just it's a marketing thing that they have a 1.9 screen in IMAX. They have these great cameras that can fill that 1.9 screen, but a lot of the scenes aren't shot with their really amazing cameras. They're shot with good cameras, but then they're going to be best at 2.40. So that they came up with this. It's really taken off. I will say that people like it, but the whole thing is in an IMAX theater, the 1.9 flight scenes on Top Gun Maverick are filling a 1.9 screen and are much bigger than the 2.40 content. On an anamorphic screen, you got 240 screen. If you change the aspect for the 1.9, you've made the things that are supposed to be bigger, smaller, and less impressive. So if you watch Top Gun Maverick as 2.40, you just disable auto aspect on the Lumagen, you're going to get the best, what the director intended for an anamorphic screen content. You get to the flight scenes, you don't notice that there's missing content because it's not that important of content. You're missing sky and ground. They still have the planes in the middle. So in my opinion, again, other people disagree. My opinion, you want to watch those movies completely as anamorphic on an anamorphic screen, if that's what you have for your home theater. And if you have masking, you certainly don't want the masking to be trying to change.
Go back and forth.
Yeah, you got louvers.
So we can do that. It's instant, less than 1/10 of a second. We're calling that instant auto aspect, and you can do it. I just don't think that's the best way to watch these movies that change aspect ratio. Now, in the first place, I don't think movies should change aspect ratio. I think that is not a great idea. No one asked me. The directors like it to do the IMAX. IMAX is working with these directors. They're selling content based on that. More power to them. I just don't like it. I don't like a movie. It takes me out of the movie. If I'm in an IMAX and the aspect ratio changes, it takes me out of the movie going, and because I'm sensitive to that, maybe I'm more so than others. It takes me right out of the movie. What? Oh, yeah, that's okay. Not a big deal. I'll watch the movie. But on a anamorphic screen, you get rid of that. You watch it all anamorphic, and it's just a much better experience, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question I have for you is it shows on the website. Let me see if it talks about sales here. So it says to contact you. So are you a direct to consumer, or are you we know obviously you spoke about dealers here. So can someone call you up or actually say, hey, I would like to purchase one of these?
Yeah, they can call me. I generally give them to a dealer. Often that's Chris Deering because of the way he does the support. But I have other dealers. If they're in a particular place, I have a dealer close to them, I will reference them to the dealer. So we're almost exclusively through dealers, and certainly in the United States. And then other countries, we have distributors who sell to dealers and then to the end users.
Okay, so pretty much you're just gonna refer us, the consumer, to a dealer.
Correct.
Nothing direct to consumer.
Correct.
All right.
Now, I do have a couple consumers who've called me and said, I don't want to buy from a dealer. I want to buy from you. I'll take their money.
Yeah, of course.
That's not our model. We do not compete with our dealers.
Yeah.
Very good.
That I agree with. If you're watching, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all that fanciful thing YouTube wants us to do.
So Jim, it's I think it's come to that time now to where we see what a person of your stature and expectations for video, we see what you're running in your theater.
I'd be happy to show you. I think we need to set up the phone. But before we do that, let me talk a little bit about what we've done here.
Sure.
Yep.
My wife is physically challenged and she wanted the business to be home. So we have moved Lumagen into an addition on our house. The addition happens to have a really wonderful depth of a false wall in front.
We kind of lost your audio.
So we have that, and then the electric actually works out of his house. So we're it was really good when COVID hit. It didn't change our life at all. We just kept going. So we have this custom built, it's 12-foot ceiling with a 14-foot diagonal Studio Tech 130 screen. RS4100. Originally, we had an RS4500. I'm still trying to sell it, but I have an RS4100 behind me. I put it on a platform. I custom built a platform for it because I figured we'd be changing projectors more often than most people. Hasn't been true. I've only changed it once, but so we have that platform. My favorite movie is the series, the Lord of the Rings series. So my wife is a hobbyist decorator, but she's really great. So she's put the theme, and I can show you the outside. We have all sorts of Lord of the Rings statuettes and stuff like that. So I can show that to you.
Yep.
We're using the Lumagen. The video processor is switching. It's the 5000 series, so we get significant improvement, in my opinion, on the Trinoff for music and spoken word, because we're doing the de-jitter to our Trinoff Altitude 16. We have 16 channels of Trinoff power amps. We have two SU Research HSU Research 15-inch subs at quarter wavelength point in the front of the room. And then, like I said, is we have 240 volts. I can show that to you. 5 zones of 240 volts. We have one for each of the 8-channel amps. Then we have one for the subs. And then we have one for the electronics like LAN and stuff. And then we have one for the sources like the Lumagen.
So if you happen to have the Artisan in there, you might want to put a blanket on it so we don't see it.
Oh, no, we don't. So, yeah, so this is the Artisan. This is the level we're at.
Okay, that's good.
We are making good progress. I think I said that. We are making good progress on the Artisan. And the other thing is we're going to redo our website. Yay. People have been asking me to do that for many years. We're going to redo our website. We're trying to update it, and then when we get the Artisan, we'll be adding that to the website.
Nice.
But we are making progress. There's a lot of work. The good news for us as the Artisan is a evolution of what we already have. So a lot of the stuff we're doing was, I have to do new chips, get a new FPGA, new pinout, new board, a very complex circuit board to lay out with traces matching. I'm matching the HDMI traces within 1/10 of a millimeter, and that takes a long time and stuff like that. So we're doing all those kind of things. We're doing all of the characteristics for transmission line circuit board designs. And so that takes time to do for a new product, but I've done it all before. So it's like, redoing that. The base FPGA code will be mostly what we have now, and then we'll improve on that. And then we'll look at, well, if we're doing this, can we put that back into the 4000, 5000 series? And some of the things we can, some of the things we won't, like the 444 pipeline won't go back into the 4000. There's not really a need for it except for gaming. So.
Okay.
I see.
That's good. So yeah, we'll have you join in on your phone, and then we can mute your laptop or even disconnect from it if you want to, and then we'll use the audio from the phone.
Let's see here. I'm gonna.
And you can use the rear camera. I can mute your laptop from here, but you might need to lower the volume.
First let me get here.
So guys, I know we had a question. Said John came in late, so he was asking what the Lumagen is. So the Lumagen is a video processor that handles your tone mapping and aspect ratios for your projector or television. So it's as Paul said here, it's the cherry on top. So, and then he also says I can't use the Arvolution player. So it's not a player. Basically, you'll feed the output of your Arvolution into the Lumagen, and it will take that signal and make it much better. So it'll give you a much better output. It'll process the video in there. If you're using a projector, let's say you have a DVD that's playing it's designed to play 1,000 nits, while your projector itself cannot display 1,000 nits. So what it does is it takes that particular content and makes it
So
so
Jim, you
that
can flip it to the back camera. Sorry to
so
cut
that your
you down.
projector will have the proper tone mapping to output to what your projector's nits can handle. If that kind of explains it to you. So it's kind of like plugging your video portion into the back of your AV processor, and then it takes the video and processes it and spits it back out to your projector or television.
So can you hear me? Can you hear us, Jim?
Yeah, I can, and
Okay.
I can't see any way to flip the camera right now.
So I think we went to the camera settings, and then you selected the back camera.
Yeah, I did it before, but I don't see it this time. More.
Yes, if you go to the more
settings, camera,
and then you can
front,
hit, you
back
can use the
triple
back.
camera.
Yeah, the back one. Yes.
Okay, so I got the back triple camera now.
And select that. And let's see if it reconnects you.
Okay, so it's not showing a picture.
You can easily maybe just hang up and join back.
There you
Okay,
go.
there you go.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, and then there's that.
Yep.
Okay, well, first of all, let me start outside. I'll walk out the door here.
And then I think if you can flip your camera, it's
Like
gonna
landscape style. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, if you can put the camera, the phone, in landscape.
This,
let's see.
Is that?
There you go.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to start here. So we have all 4 of Gandalf's staffs from the various movies, including The Hobbit, The Shield, the Boromir's horn, axes. I guess is that sideways for you guys?
Yeah, that's vertical. So if you turn it the other way, we get more of a picture.
Yeah, it is
Like
horizontal.
that.
It's not staying that way. And then we have swords, and of course, let me go back. Here's the Lumagen Theater with the marquee, and we have all sorts of statues,
Oh, nice.
various things. We have the light of whatever. We have the One Ring and various. I don't know why it's not staying that way.
There you go. Yeah, that's pretty wild. The light. Yeah, that's awesome. You got a lot of.
And my wife likes to say we don't have it all put up yet. The various helmets, Gandalf, Gimli, and Legolas.
Oh, man, gosh, yeah.
Galadriel.
Yeah.
So we have that, and then we have. She wanted we wanted a. It doesn't stay that way. So we wanted a castle theme. So we have a really nice door with the little nail knobs on it.
Oh, that is cool.
And nice handle.
Oh, I like that handle. That's very nice.
And then we go into the theater.
Oh, the
she had these sconces custom.
I noticed the torches
Look
right
at
away.
those
That is
sconces,
cool.
And so a bit of a castle thing. We got faux beams in there. She had these banners custom made so that we can have that theme. And then we go to, it doesn't stay there for some reason. So there's the projector RS4100.
That's equivalent to the NZ9, right?
That is the NZ9, yes. Yeah. And then we come in here. So we have a 2.40 Studio Tech 130, no masking. Interestingly enough, the standards committee for CEDIA is saying that masking will be, if you want the highest level of standard, level 4, you need to have screen masking. But I find with the JVC, the the static contrast is good enough that I don't notice when we watch 16:9. And like I said, most movies are 240. So we have that there. Then, so it's a 12-foot high room. We have, of course, the 3 front speakers. We have 2 surrounds on the left and the right, and 2 in the back, and 6 overheads for the Atmos. We have 2 subs.
What speakers are you using, Jim?
We use, for the center, we have a Revel C208. And for the sides, we have Revel F206s for the side there.
Oh, nice.
And just a second there. So there's that. Let me turn a light on.
Oh, we can see it actually pretty good.
Yeah, we can see. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You don't even need to bother with the light.
So we have the Tritoff and the center speaker in the center there. Then I thought about doing 19-inch racks, but I just thought it would be simpler. We just use the bought these racks, the shelving, wire shelving from Amazon. They're like $35. I mean, and I use wire ties, zip ties and stuff to keep the cables aligned. I have 3-meter cables for all that. So we have a Strato C here. You can see the Strato C.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a Terra server. It's a 40 terabyte server. We have an Oppo 203, which I wish when they were going out of business, for that I should have bought a bunch, but I didn't. So I'm hoping that never dies. This is actually a Cinemike modified Oppo 203. Cinemike is a company in Germany who also hot rods Lumagens and actually makes them better, lower jitter for audio files as well.
Yeah.
I have a
we had them on.
we covered them. We had them on.
We had them on here
on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Michael's a good guy, and they liked the product enough that they spent time to make it, improve it. So there are things that we can't reasonably do, like buy a $100 crystal, and they can. So they basically spare no expense to try to make it as good as you can absolutely do. So,
now, are you sharing future designs of the new player to them?
they are very interested in getting a hold of an artisan.
Yeah.
So we will be talking to them, and I am not opposed to them hot rodding the artisan if they want to.
Very good.
It's good.
So, and then over here we have the Crestron controller at the top. Then we have a 16-port router hub, and then we have 5 zones. These are the Akesis 240 to 240 volt power transformers. 5 zones.
Okay.
And how do those work? Are they not like that's not like a surge protector, right? What is talk about that a little bit.
It's an isolation transformer. Actually, let me show you before I do that, and I'm going to go back to the computer. Yeah. But in here we have one of the subs and my very expensive bass traps. I bought a cardboard box and stuffed it full of rock wool.
There you go. Yep. Got the same subs I got. That's funny.
So I'm going to go back here to the computer screen, and I'm going to shut this one down here.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Man, that looks amazing.
We'll add you back.
That is some pretty cool stuff.
I'm going to add him back
yeah,
there. And then
remove his iPhone.
I'll remove the iPhone.
Yep. That's awesome.
Okay. We have you back. You can increase the volume of your computer so you can hear us.
Yeah, I did. Okay.
All right. So what about treatments, Jim? What did you do all the treatments yourself, or did you have a company do that for you?
Yeah, I did all the design of the theater. I built my own the boxes for the sides, the surrounds and sides and back, and in the ceiling. I built those out of plywood, and built my own speaker. Those are W380s from Rebel, in-wall speakers, 8-inch in-wall. So all the surrounds are W380s. So I did all that. So what I did was I didn't want to get it wrong. So I read a book by Floyd Toole on acoustics. I basically was looking for the book that I thought was did the science the best, and his did. The interesting thing it was amusing that I read the book, and 3 weeks later I was having dinner at his house. So
Oh, wow.
it was kind of fun. But
That's awesome.
so one of the key things is 4-inch thick acoustic panels on the walls, first reflections all around, but 4-inch also gives you better bass than a 2-inch or even a 1-inch. So you get 4 inches there. We have a false wall up front, and I have lots of insulation throughout that, rock wool and regular insulation in there to actually act as absorption in that. We don't really have any diffuse in this room other than the pillars. And so there's not really a lot of diffusion, but we do have first reflection all around, and I do have one 4x6, 4-inch thick panel in the ceiling for first reflection up to the ceiling and back down. So that was the key. Very thick. I bought the thickest pad I could get for the carpet, and it's a really good room. Adam Pels came and did a tune. He takes 2 days to do a really good job. He does some bass tuning of the room. Actually, before he came, I had a resonance at about 35 hertz, I think. I had to go put some reinforcement in the false wall because it was resonating at about 35 hertz. So I did that, came in, and he manually tunes the bass. Then he uses the trim off in this case to do the rest, and then he hand tunes it by using the parametric EQs for audio. So he does a really good job of making 2-channel stereo sound really good in here. I'm an old 2-channel guy. I had Wilson Audio, Watt Puppies, Jeff Rowland preamp, power amp, and really good wire. And the sound here is not quite as good as that, but it's really good. So I'm very happy with how that came out. Adam did a great job tuning the sound in the room.
So let me ask you, being a video guy, I have the NZ8 projector, and I have the Lumagen. I have the Studio Tech, but mine has got the Perf. I noticed that you don't have a lens, a Panamorph lens. Is that something that you recommend, or something that you don't feel the need with, since you have the Lumagen?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I definitely run the projector at 40/96 wide to get that 13 extra % of light output. I had a Panamorph lens, but I didn't have the throw ratio. I only had about 1.4. And for that lens, you really want at least 1.6, and honestly, 1.8 or 2.0 would be better. So I had a lot of pin cushion. And what I tell people is, if you've got pin cushion or barrel distortion, you've done your theater wrong. You shouldn't try to fix that digitally. I just got rid of the lens, and so I sold it, and I don't use a lens, and I live with a little bit less light. And what I like to talk to people about light, there's definitely too little light, but your eyes adapt, your irises adapt. In a dark room, 80 nits over time is probably going to look as bright to you as 100 or 120, maybe not as much as 300 nits, but if you're in that range, your iris adapts, and you don't notice the fact that I've got 80 nits in mid laser. I could go to high laser, but the sound is a little too much. And so I just stay at mid laser. 80 nits is really good. You don't get the kind of highlights you're going to get out of a TV, but 100 nits or 120 or even 150 isn't going to get that for you. And so what I like about HDR is it gives you really good signal to noise ratio near black. And to me, that's more important than the highlights, because a lot of the highlights, they're few and far between in some cases. A lot of content doesn't really do a great job with the highlights, but that deep black is very impressive on an NZ8 like you have or an NZ9 with a contrast ratio. I'm in this room. This is a wife-approved room. It's dark gray, and the walls aren't covered with black felt, and so it's not going to get you the full contrast you could get out of a total bat cave, but it's really good. I measured 22,000 to 1 on the NZ9 that I have here of static contrast. So I don't notice if I'm watching 16:9. I think I said this. I don't really notice the sidebars when it's a dark room. In a bright scene, yeah, you can kind of see that's there. Would I like masking? I think it's a good thing to have. Side masking would be allowing us to totally black that out. But I'm very happy with this since I watch mostly 240 movies. And
so if you're watching 16:9 content, you're not linear stretching that?
No, I don't do that. Now, well, actually, let me say at this time, because I was doing testing and stuff, I tell the Lumagen that if the content 16:9, the output aspect's 2.2, even though it's 2.4. So I get a 9% stretch.
Okay.
2.0 content, I tell it it's 2.2. So that fills up more of the screen. 2.2 content, I tell it it's 2.2. 2.2 content fills the screen for me. 1.7.8 fills more of the screen. The blur is a little bit narrower, which I like, but yeah, you don't want to do nonlinear stretch on movies. I think that's a really bad idea.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So if I'm playing like a 16:9, I think there's some. Most of the 16:9 that I have, I believe, is animation. So, your recommendation is not to use the nonlinear stretch mode on those.
Not on movies. Sports maybe, talking heads, news programs maybe, not for movies, in my opinion. If you want to fill your screen, get a 2.1 screen. And I've had a number of people who hadn't bought their screen yet go for a 2.1 or 2.0 or 2.2 and love it. That hey, I get to fill this and it doesn't look outrageously stretched. Nonlinear stretching, I said this earlier, but nonlinear stretching 1.7.8 to 2.0 or 2.1 looks pretty reasonable even on a movie. And the best movies aren't really 16:9 today. They're 2.4.0.
Right.
2.4.0 on a 2.1, you stretch a little vertically, you crop a little off the left and the right, which most movies are shot protected for 16:9 anyway. So you're not losing, important content. You can fill your 2.1 screen with 2.4.0 or 2.3.5 content. The purists won't like it. I understand, but it is a good way if you like the idea of a really big television.
Yeah. Very good. Let's see if we got any questions in here. So, Anthony, we were talking about the lens. He says the alpha lens fixes that pin cushion and barrel that you were talking about.
Correct. Yeah, there have been some issues with that lens, and I think he's introduced. Panomorph has introduced a lens for 40-96 wide apertures. The early one, the A lens, did not work with 40-96 width.
So he also says he's on a minimum throw. John says he comes here to get his mind blown, get jealous of other people's setup, and then goes to and go to work.
You're not alone, John. You're not alone. Trust me.
Oh man,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm jealous of Don, like still constructing.
I'm functional at least now, so that was the main goal. So
yeah, I mean, I was like, if I even upgraded half as much as he has,
I've upgraded one projector.
2.
1.
No, what? No.
Well, I bought an old.
You bought an old
projector.
one. You never even touched it, but that's still an upgrade. You bought
I was
it
on the used market for $500. I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I just started with one, then you went to another one, then you on to the
I got a
third one.
killer deal on that NZ7.
If I would have upgraded
or
At
not
that level,
NZ7,
I would
NX7.
be at a Barco right now.
Speaking of Barco, Jim, I think you're going to answer my question here because you just talked about the black floors and everything else like that. Why, do you prefer a bright? I think you already said it. You rather have the black levels than, let's say, what a Christie can do or what a Barco can do. Do you prefer the more of the highlight or more of the? Because I know that they're restricted with black with their black levels and contrast because they're putting out so much light. If you had the opportunity, let's say, and I don't know that you don't have the opportunity already, but do you would if you could, would you put a Christie or a Barco in place of the JVC?
There's some new light steering technology. And it was Christie that's is that the Barco has light steering?
I thought it was
there's a new Christie thing too for improving contrast ratio.
Okay.
I would like a 3-trip RGB laser, very bright projector with light steering technology to get the contrast in really good shape. DLP, a lot of DLPs only have like 800 or 1,000 to 1 contrast, which I would not find enough. I think I might be acceptable of some of the Barcos and Christies now. I think are around 4,000, maybe even 6,000 with a custom lens. And those are getting to the point where, I would find them acceptable, get the brighter output. It would be nice to have a little bit more light than the 80 nits that we have, or the 105 I think I get with the high laser. And I like DLP technology. I think it looks really good. So I would not be opposed if someone wanted to hand me a Barco or a Christie. Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So one thing that we didn't touch on real quick, because we are coming towards the end of the show, 3D. Do you partake in any 3D movies, or I know that there's obviously settings. You calibrate in the Lumagen 3D, and there's different settings for both 2D and 3D.
Okay, so I like 3D. I actually considered, when I built this theater, doing a dual projector with circular polarization for passive 3D lenses. But that put us out of our budget, and the Y factor and everything is like, okay, I'm the only one who really likes 3D in my family. I mean, literally, we had a 3D TV back in the day. I bought a dozen very expensive 3D glasses. And we watched 2 3D movies, and then I could never, ever get someone to watch a 3D movie with me again. So it's like, okay, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
now we have customers
it has
doing
a
that. We
learning
have
curve.
doing the dual projector.
Life. Love it. So
2D, I mean, we get the 2D to look, it looks almost 3-dimensional. There's so much detail there. 4K, really good processing in the Lumagen, very, very low noise, and noise affects DILA projectors like the JVC. And so getting that noise level down using a Radiance Pro 5000 series actually gives you even a better, a little bit more 3-dimensional feeling to the 2D, in my opinion.
So it does a little bit better than the 4.2 series. Is that what you're saying?
It is definitely for audio. For video, I have to be really careful because I noticed a little bit, but it's not enough that I try to sell that yeah, you're going to see that improvement. It's very subtle, and so I just say, hey, you might see some in the 5.
I see. Very good. Let's see here. So True Pro Home Cinema says, can your home theater do below matrix surround steering? Not many top, even millionaire ones have theaters have it. Very easy to do in floor surrounds. Do you have any in-floor surrounds?
yeah, that's a
The only theater that I've seen that has that
do
is
not have any.
That's more of a Disney theme
Yeah.
park type
Well,
of.
So Shane Lee, he went to Ascendo. He went to their headquarters. I forgot where it's out of, and they had floor.
Oh, do they have them?
Yeah, they had floor and ceiling.
I know
you
mine don't. I ain't got all that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I don't. I've never been in one.
I would
so.
think that most. I would think that most content is struggling to use the slides and the overheads well.
I know, right?
And
Agreed.
I don't know that
You don't want to
floors,
throw the
unless you
floor
have
in the
a
mix.
custom, practically useful in reality.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have them, so I can't tell you for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
and you got to remember, I mean, home theater, and that's where to me there's a little bit of a delineation, right? Like home theater, that's like a 12 by 20, and that's on a large home theater, right? Are you gonna hear in floor? There's like, how many channels do you need to cover a 12 by 20 space to be full, immersion?
Yeah.
So that's
Except you're watching a movie that has like an earthquake or underwater. I'm not sure why, what
now
you're
if you're
expecting to
talking,
come out of the ground.
yeah, if you're talking an 8-row, 15 wide, yeah, sure, the world.
You might get that one concert that you play that the guy rises up out of the stage.
Yeah. yeah. If you're in what's the Vegas Dome thing that they have?
Oh, the Sphere.
If they only had like one person per concert, and you had to sit in the center, and you just could do, oh yeah, I hear them all. I hear all 40,000 speakers in every location below me and everywhere. So there's a give and take, but I haven't heard any of that below.
Yeah, just give us front wides. We need more content on the front wides.
Exactly.
Don't even worry about the floor.
So which Trinoff do you have, Jim? Do you have the 32 or the 16?
We have the Altitude 16, again, a budget kind of thing, but it works great. We have 9.2.6. And so that works out perfectly. I mean, our theater is 19 wide, 21 deep, to the false wall. The one thing I would do differently, I would make it, if I had the money, I would make it wider so that the difference between the center seat to the side speakers and the leftmost or rightmost speakers to the side speakers wasn't such a large ratio. I mean, people sitting on the very far left are 2 feet, 3 feet from the side speakers, and I'm 10 feet from the side, 9 feet from the side speakers. So to me, that would be a really good improvement if you had the money. Make the theater bigger so that you're getting a better envelope of people being in the sweet spot.
Yeah. That's the
Very
tough
good.
part. That's the tough part, right?
Well, guys, if you would like to purchase a Lumagen, you can reach out to. Let me go ahead and put this back up here. Trouble seeing it in front of my camera here. Share. So reach out to Jim, and he will direct you in the proper location to get yourself a Lumagen. If you see something that you need fixing, that's the time that you say, okay, I think it's time. My blacks are crushing here, or this is this something's bothering you, and
my whites are clipping, my blacks are crushing.
Right.
Not anymore.
Yeah. So
For sure. Or my favorite, my audio is out of sync.
yeah, your
I
lip
love
sync.
the jitter compensation, because as a telecom engineer, I deal with jitter all the time.
So go ahead and reach out to Jim here so that he can get you set up with a dealer in your area or someone that he recommends, like a Chris Deering. But Jim, any closing statement here?
I'm just, happy to be here with you guys talking. I always enjoy. It's my hobby to do home theater, so it's something that I've been doing now for 23 years. It's really exciting. It's always like running a small business is always, it has its ups and downs, but the fun part is doing the design and then listening to the result. I've always liked jobs where I get to see and hear what I'm working on, as opposed to it's some software program that the bits are there, but you don't get to enjoy the result of your work. So this is really great. I love it. If you want to ask about the Lumagen, certainly reach out to me. Basically, I would point you at our front page of our website. We went ahead and put the tutorial, the testimonials on the front page. Then John Thompson is there featured prominently. He talks about doing these comparisons with directors and producers, and they always pick the Lumagen, which is really heartening to have him at his stature be such a supporter of Lumagen. He's not getting anything out of it except he likes Lumagen, which is really great, and we become really good friends.
That's cool.
So I always thank him. He's been very helpful. We have some B stocks which we give 10%. We're having a sale 10% off on our 5,000 through the middle of April. So if you're interested, get you set up a little bit less. The 5,000. It's not an inexpensive purchase, but we have a lot of people who understand you buy the Lumagen first and you take whatever projector budget you have left over and you buy your projector, and you're going to end up with a better result.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim, we definitely appreciate you being a guest on the show this evening. Everyone, go out if you're seeing, like I was saying, if you're seeing an issue with your picture, your blacks are crushing, you need better tone mapping. If you have a scope screen, and you don't want to get up and down to put your masking up, by all means, reach out to Jim. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the show, please email us at hometheaterhublive@gmail.com. And then please do all that great YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff to Ike and myself's channel. I think Paul is secretly up to about 9 or 10 subscribers on his channel.
I haven't even made it. I would blame that on friggin' Ike. I'm like, why are people on my channel? I haven't even started it yet. Like, what's going on here?
We definitely appreciate everyone tuning in this evening. Jim, if you just hang on for a second,
we'll
see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
Later.